Jess here, and welcome to my channel, and welcome to this week's reading vlog. So it's November, technically November 2nd, because today has just not been the day to film, and I am finally starting this vlog. I really wanted to check in earlier, and I woke up to construction next door, and then I had to go do errands, and I was just like, I'm just gonna wait till later when everything's calm and quiet and chill, and like my parents are in bed and I don't have to worry about interruptions. So here I am, finally kicking off this week's vlog. I'm very excited to dive into November. If you saw my TBR game, you know that it's going to be a very interesting month. And I say this as somebody who I believe has like 60 books, 50 books, 60 books. It's a ridiculous number of books that I just don't think are physically possible to read in 1 month. I think I need to read like 560 pages a day. And I never, ever hit that consistently. So I know that number is only going to go up. And that's assuming none of my library holds come in, because that will make that number rise, because I don't know that they're coming. But they're probably going to be 14-day books, which means I'm going to have to read them and get them back. Anywho, I have read, because I did read some today. So I'm going to tell you what I read and what I thought of it. So first I read Mr. Lemoncello's All-Star Breakout Game, and I gave this 3.75 stars. This is the fourth book in the Mr. Lemoncello series, and Mr. Lemoncello creates all sorts of games, and we've seen him open this library in our main character Kyle's hometown, and lots of interesting things have happened, and Kyle ends up participating once again in one of Mr. Lemoncello's games. We see all kinds of codes and puzzles, and he's got to work together with friends and even have to deal with a nemesis. And I think this is a really fun middle grade series. I think that the codes are interesting. They're a little simple for me, but I think they're interesting, and I think they are absolutely something that middle grade me would have nerded out over. They're exactly the kind of thing that I was into when I was a middle grader myself. So I really do enjoy this series. I think it had a good lesson in it, and I really enjoyed that because I was not expecting that to be part of the story. And I'm definitely still invested in the series to the point that I picked up Mr. Lemoncello and the Titanium Ticket, which is book number 5 in the series. I have gotten to page 166, so I'm making really good progress in this. This obviously is the 5th book, and this one deviates a little bit because we have a new narrator. The first 4 books have all been told from Kyle's point of view, and in this one, we're following a new boy named Simon, and he is another kid that is competing in one of Mr. Lemoncello's games. And it feels very almost Willy Wonka-esque, because Mr. Lemoncello has his GameWorks factory, and they're getting to be the first kid. They're like competing to be the first kids to go inside it. But also inside there's a special titanium ticket that they can find, which reminds me of like Willy Wonka's golden tickets. So I'm very curious to see how this kind of wraps up, because some intriguing things have happened. I don't know that I like Simon as much as I like Kyle. So that is interesting. And I believe I have 2 books left in the series. So I actually just bought, I think it's called like Mr. Lemoncello's First Game, which is like a prequel. And I literally just got that. So I have to read that one. And then I believe I have 1 book left after that, which comes out next month. So I'm going to try to finish the series this year. So we'll see how that goes. But I have no idea whether we stick with Simon, whether we'll go back to Kyle for that one, or whether we'll get somebody completely new. So very curious to see where things go. I'm very curious to see how this wraps up, because it's not going the way I expected it to. So while I don't like Simon as much as I like Kyle, I'm enjoying, I think, the adventure and the mystery that we're on in this one slightly more than this one. So we'll see where this one ends up. I also just remembered I started, I think it's Murder at the Manor. I was sitting outside of Walmart and waiting for my pickup order, and it was like, it'll be out soon. We're just a little bit behind. It's slightly delayed. And we were already there because we went to the vet to pick up the medicine, and the vet is like a 5-minute drive from Walmart. So we just gave ourselves enough time to hit the vet and then drive over to Walmart, expecting our order would be ready, and then we had to sit there. So I ended up like waiting, and then like finally giving up and going, do I have an ebook I could read? I've got to have an ebook on my TBR, right? And I did. So I ended up reading like I think 3 or 4 pages of that. So I have nothing to say about that whatsoever, other than that I've started it and I have to remember to get back to it. The other two kind of priorities is I need to finish Witch Hat Atelier Volume 4, and I need to finish The Astonishing Chronicles of Oscar from Elsewhere. This one is the fourth book in the extremely inconvenient adventures of Bronte Metalstone. And as I've said in previous vlogs, I'm struggling with this one because I'm trying to place the characters. And I probably should have reread the first 3 books before I read this one. But we're following Oscar, who has been dropped into Bronte's world, which is quite different than our world, because I think he comes from our world. And we're following a character we've met in the other books who is trying to deal with Oscar just randomly showing up. And a town of elves that has been buried under layers of silver, and the other character needs to deal with that. It's kind of their responsibility. So we're seeing that play out, and I think this is a series that really would have benefited from a reread. And then in this one, we're following a young girl named Coco who has always wanted to be a witch, and something happens in the first book that leads her on the path to becoming one, and we've kind of seen her journey. I'm enjoying this one, but this is another one where I don't know that I enjoyed this one as much as I have the first 3, but I'm still early days in it, so it could change as I read. But that's where I'm at. I don't know that I have any concrete plans for this week. I knew I was going to be picking up Mr. Limoncello because I had the audiobooks, and I knew they were going to have to go back. The only other audiobook I have that I know is due soonish, actually there's 2, is Every Heart a Doorway, because I had taken that out for Host Fave or Guildmaster Fave in Fabelin, and then I didn't get time to listen to it. But since I've got it, I kind of want to, even though it's not on my TBR. So we'll see if I end up doing that. And then the other audiobook I have is Disability Visibility, first-person stories from the 21st century. So I may end up listening to this depending on how things go, because I was also contemplating if I have the audiobook for long enough and I can get the audiobooks for the other books, because all 4 books on my nonfiction November TBR actually have audiobooks. I was thinking, because Final Book Support Group runs the 11th through the 17th, I would have the 8th, the 9th, and the 10th, and I was wondering if I could do like a nonfiction weekend. So we'll see what I end up doing, because my mood may change, my plans may change, but that's kind of where I'm at. I have to do lots and lots and lots of reading, and I would really, really like to catch up on editing. I'm this close. I have 2 vlogs, and that's only because the last vlog was 3 days. So, like, I should, in regular terms, I should be in, like, halfway through a week right now. And I'm not, because we only had 3 days left in October, and that's how I decided to break it up. So, we'll see. But ideally, it would be really, really cool if I could stay kind of on top of that. But we all know I'm not the best at editing on a regular basis, and I still have April's book haul, May's book haul, June's book haul, July's book haul, August's book haul, and then I need to film September and October's book hauls so that I can edit them. And let me tell you, September was not great, but October I've gone just a wee bit overboard, because shopping, especially for books, gives me a slight bit of a high. It stimulates that happy, excited part of my brain. And because I was so sad, I did exactly what I did after my gram died earlier this year, which was to shop for a bunch of books. And because I was experiencing more grief again, I decided to shop for a bunch of books. So I have a very hefty, I think it's like a 50 book haul for October. So you have that to look forward to if I ever sit down, film it, edit it, and upload it, and get all of the backlog uploaded. So we'll see. We're going to do our best. And I know I said this in the last vlog, and I think the vlog before that, but thank you for being patient with me. I am trying to catch up. It's just been, well, I feel like 2024 has been crazy, and I finally felt like I was getting on stable footing, and then October happened and went, you thought? No, it's not. Enjoy this platter of garbage we're going to shove your way. So thank you for being patient with me. I really, really do appreciate how kind you all are when I say stuff like this, and it's so nice knowing I have a community that understands that I'm doing my best, and I'm trying to get the content to you as fast as I can, while also making sure that I'm not sacrificing my mental health to do it. So we're going to see how this goes. I'm going to wrap this up because now I'm feeling awkward because I feel like I maybe said too much, and I'm going to go, but I will check back in with you in a few days and give you an update on what I've read, and hopefully I have a lot more done, because I haven't incredible amount of books I would like to read this month. So, while this may look like a normal vlog clip, it is indeed not. This is Editing Chris. Editing Chris made a bit of a boo-boo. When I was working on editing some vlogs and trying to clear up some room on my phone, I accidentally deleted this clip. Oops. So you are talking to Wednesday, November 27th, Chris, who is going to try to run you quickly through the books that I read during that clip so that you at least have an idea of what I did. I hemmed and hawed about how I was going to do this, and at the end, I decided I was just going to try to quickly tell you what I read and give you some slight impressions. I'm never going to be able to recreate that clip, and I can tell you that it was really weird because I managed to pick up a bunch of books that in some way felt triggering, even when unintentional. I will try to briefly mention that as I pick them up. So I have been reading Mr. Limoncello and the Titanium Ticket, and I ended up giving this 3.5 stars. I definitely don't like the POV in this one anywhere near as much as Kyle. I was enjoying the story more. Cielo, please don't do that. But there were definitely some things that happened in the back half of this book that brought my rating down some. It is, I would say, my least favorite book in the series. Though I am curious to see where we go from here based on things that happen, and I'm still very curious to see what POV we get. It just, like I said, wasn't my favorite POV, and I think I would have preferred we stuck with Kyle, but I also understand, based on the story of the book, why we didn't. Then I read Murder at the Manor. I had mentioned I had started that, and I ended up giving this one 4 stars. This is a historical cozy mystery. So in this book, we're following Tommy and Evelyn, and we get scenes from both of their POVs. And they are gathered together with family, and I believe it is Tommy's uncle, and he ends up dying mysteriously while they're gathered, and it's kind of like, I think, if I remember correctly, a closed door mystery, where we know we're kind of looking at the main suspects, because they kind of have to be, I think, in the house, and Tommy and Evelyn decide to start to look into it because, like I said, mysterious circumstances. I remember really enjoying this. I thought it was a good start to a series. I really liked Tommy and Evelyn, and getting that kind of dual perspective and seeing how that plays out. I'm very intrigued with where things go based on this book, and it is 100% a series I will continue. Then I finished The Astonishing Chronicles of Oscar from Elsewhere, and I gave this 3.25 stars. So I can tell you most of the details have fled my mind of this one. And that 3.25 stars was earned, but I also think more would have stuck with me had I reread the other books, and I think I had mentioned that as I was reading it. So I thought it was perfectly fine. I do remember that. I didn't have any big issues with it. I do like the characters, and I liked the story. I just spent so much time of that book trying to remember the world that it did it a disservice, and I do plan, because there is a book 5, to next year reread the first 4 and then read book 5, because 1, I want to make sure I don't do the same disservice to book 5, and 2, I want to see if it changes my rating on Oscar from Elsewhere. Then I read the Auntie book, and I gave this 3.5 stars. This follows Mickey, and he is just mad at the world, and he ends up getting this Auntie book, and when you write things in it, they disappear. So he writes all of these things he wishes would go away: his parents, his dog, his sister's boyfriend, his sister, the school, just all of these things he's angry at, because he's literally angry at everything, and they all disappear. And he ends up in the anti-world trying to figure out how to reverse what he did. So one of the reasons he's angry is because his parents got divorced, and they've both gotten remarried to women. And it isn't that they're women, it's just he didn't understand why they had to get divorced. He didn't like that. It made him angry, and it made him angry at their new wives, at his sister, like I said, at the world. And one of the reasons I was really excited for this book is because it was likened to the Phantom Tool Booth, and I can totally see that. I totally see where that description comes in, because there are definitely some similarities, and I totally get what they mean. I just don't think it was executed as well as it was in the Phantom Toll Booth. That said, I did have a good time with this, and some of the details have definitely faded in the 3 weeks since I've read it, but the Phantom Tool Booth part definitely stuck with me, like the way that kind of came in. I think this is one that I probably would have appreciated more when I was a middle grader. I, as an adult, was far more frustrated with Mickey's attitude. And I think as a middle grader, I might have sympathized with him a little bit more. So those were my main takeaways from this one 3 weeks later. Then I read Witch Hat Atelier Volume 4, and I gave this 3.5 stars. This wasn't my favorite one in the series. I wasn't super necessarily invested in the story going on. And there was a character in this one who behaved in ways that I didn't enjoy. I do remember that. I remember the main parts of it, which if I told you would be spoilers, but I don't have any big thoughts other than that it wasn't my favorite. And like I said, one of the characters' attitude really annoyed me. Then I read The Night We Lost Him, which I gave 3.5 stars. So this is a thriller, and it follows, I'm not going to remember their names, but it starts with a guy named Liam, and he's at his house by himself, and he ends up dying. And we don't know the circumstances really that lead up to what happened. And then we see his kids, and his kids are going, I don't think he actually fell off this cliff. They're wondering if there was something more going on. And we follow a brother and sister, and they don't really interact because the daughter is the child from the first marriage, and the son is one of the kids from the second marriage, and we're in the daughter's POV, and they are suspicious about his death because he knows this property. They can't imagine he slipped. And so they start looking into it to see, did he really fall? Or did he jump? Or was he maybe pushed? I can't say that I was super attached to this. I vaguely remember how it turned out. Again, it's another one that didn't really stick with me, which makes sense with a 3.5. I can tell you, though, that this was the start of why am I reading these books that keep reminding me of my Liam from One Direction. And again, I don't know if y'all been paying attention to it, but there's definitely a lot of shady stuff that involves Liam's death, and it is in some ways similar to what happened to this Liam. So in the beginning, it was really hard because I was like, I don't know if I can stick with this. Eventually, I started to separate the two, but in the beginning, I had a rough go. So I am positive that if you had seen me in that clip, I would have been much more emotional. Now I've got some time and space, and also just time and space from the whole My Liam tragedy that have helped kind of move that along. Then I got to read Hazel Bly and the Deep Blue Sea, and I gave this 5 stars. I adored this. This follows Hazel, and she and her mom and her younger sister have moved to a new town. I want to say Maine. Yes, Rose Harbor, Maine. And she's not happy. She just wants to go home. 2 years ago, something happened, and it left Hazel with some crippling anxiety, some scars, and her other mom died. And Hazel is struggling. She wants to go back home where she can be surrounded by her mama's memories. Mama is the word she uses to describe that mom, and mum is the word she uses to describe the other. So just for clarification. And she doesn't understand why her mom keeps moving them around. She does not want to be in Rose Harbor. And unfortunately, once there, they end up bumping into one of her mom's old friends, like from way before her mom even met her mama, and she's not happy. This woman, Claire, has a daughter named Lemon that is Hazel's age, so she ends up kind of getting stuck with Lemon and isn't happy about that either. And we get to see their summer, and Hazel, like I said, is struggling so hard. Just the anxiety she feels is so real and so well written that at times I was getting anxious on her behalf. The grief that she's feeling is also extremely well written, and given that I was also grieving, it was such an interesting conundrum to be reading this at that time. I love the way Ashley Herring Blake crafted this book. I felt that Hazel was such a well done, well written character that I could so relate to, and I just wanted her to be okay. I wanted her to find a way to be okay, to deal with this grief and deal with this anxiety and find a way to start to work through it. And I love seeing that journey and how being in Maine and having Claire and Lemon come into their lives affects this whole family. So very, very much would recommend this book. But keep in mind, very well written anxiety, very well written grief. So if that's not something you can handle reading, you probably shouldn't pick it up, at least not right now. And then the last book I finished in that period was We Still Belong by Christine Day. And I gave this 4.25 stars. So this follows Wesley, and she's getting ready to have her poem on Indigenous Peoples Day published. And she's nervous, but also excited. She also wants to ask a cute kid out at school to, I believe, a school dance. And then she heads off to school that day with the plan. The poem is going to come out. It's going to be great. And she's going to ask the cute boy out. And just nothing goes according to plan that day. And we see her just trying to get through that day in the aftermath of those events. I picked this up because it said, in this warm hug of a novel. And I just thought, oh, that sounds exactly like what I need. It's perfect. And what I can remember from this book, the thing that stuck with me, and again, this is no fault of the book, this is the space I was in, is that there is a conversation that happens between Wesley and her grandfather, where her grandfather is talking about missing her grandmother, who had died years earlier. And he was talking, I've actually found it, because it stuck with me, and I have a memory where I can remember like what side of a page it's on. So he was talking about how he struggled to get normal, and he would catch himself looking for a signal that she used to give him in life. And for him, he's saying, like, it still happens. I still look for that. And every time it does, it hurts, which I get, I understand. And he said, it reminds me that even if she isn't here anymore, I can help to keep her around by telling her stories and remembering the many things about her that I loved. And I just went, we get to do that with Liam. We're going to keep his memory alive because we're going to talk about funny 1D stories, funny Liam stories. I know that I've seen so many people talk about videos that he posted during the pandemic and how that helped them get through the day. And we're going to keep him alive. So it was like, I was reading this book to get a break from that and then got smacked in the face with it. And our main character said, what if she's still here? When you look for her, when you sense her presence and look for the signal, maybe it's her. And I also love that idea because I do believe in signs. And there have definitely been some things that fans have seen that absolutely feel like signs from Liam. And I know that might sound a little crazy because, like, why would this, celebrity be sending signs to fans? But one, even if it's not, if it brings you comfort, who cares? Two, I'll be honest, since I've read this book, I truly believe I've had my own sign from Liam. And it was when I stopped looking for it. And all of a sudden, there it was. And I truly believe that was a sign from Liam, because I do believe in signs. And again, even if I'm wrong, what does it hurt? And three, based on everything I knew about Liam as a person, he is absolutely 100% the type of person that if he could send signs to his fans to make them feel better, he would. So that is one of the things I remember most about this book, was reading this book and really enjoying the story and seeing her struggle and deal with like regular middle grade stuff, like a crush on a boy and things not going according to plan, but also dealing with like Indigenous Peoples Day not being treated the way she maybe thought it should have, and learning more about her tribe and her culture, and then being smacked in the face with this. So that is probably going to be the part I remember most from this book, just because of the time that I read it. But it made for an interesting few days because I was reading We Still Belong, Hazel Bly, and The Night We Lost Him, all kind of at the same time. Like, those were all back to back to back, and I was like, what is going on? So those were the big takeaways, and I'm never going to be able to recreate the emotion I had in that clip because, again, I didn't just read these. I'm also 3 weeks out in the grieving process, so I'm not going to be able to recreate that clip, but hopefully this does a good enough job to let you know. I was also in the middle of a couple of other things. You'll see me mention them in the next clip. And yeah, sorry that you get editing, Chris, and that it's not as pretty, but at least you know what I read, what I thought, and some basic ideas of what everything's about. And don't be surprised if you see me again in a future video, because this may not have been the only clip that I deleted. Oops. Now, on to some kitty content before returning to past Chris to wrap this vlog up. So it is officially the 8th, which means it is time to wrap this vlog up. So, as I said, as we have a Cielo coming over, I was working on my standalones, and I think I made some decent progress since all of the standalones I wanted to get to, I did. Except for one. And I'll pop her up. See, she's here. So if you see her, that's why. I'm trying to keep her on my lap. It's tricky. So the one I didn't read was Don't Be a Drag. And there was a reason for this. So I was getting ready to pick this up last night before bed, and I opened it, and I love that more authors are starting to do this, but there's an author's note at the beginning, and it says, before reading Don't Be a Drag, please check the trigger warnings below, as this book contains graphic descriptions of mental health. Cielo, they don't need to get that close to you. So as you can see, and I'm going to hold it, oops, Cielo, up here so you can see there's a ton of trigger warnings. And I read through those and went, I do want to read this book. But based on the mental state I'm in right now, I do not think I should read it right now. So we're going to return this to the library, and I've added it to my June TBR for next year as a reminder that I want to read it. And we'll see if I can get to it in Pride Month next year, where hopefully I will be in a better headspace. But who knows? I just refused to read a book that very blatantly spelled out what the trigger warnings were, and it felt like it was a very not good time to read that book. However, I did finish the others, so let me run through them. I finished Simon Sort of Says, and I gave this 4.5 stars. I really, really enjoyed this. I loved the relationships Simon built with his friends. I loved seeing his struggle with his PTSD and his work to try to overcome that, though it does feel weird to say that I love that. But I think it was such a good depiction of PTSD, and I think it's important to put that out there for kids. I think a lot of kids will relate in some ways to this book because the school shooting culture is so prevalent that I think every kid knows about it, knows it's a possibility, knows that it has happened at other schools. And while we're following a kid who is a survivor, that doesn't mean that other kids can't relate to the fear of it happening. So I think that's intriguing. I really like the town where he ended up as he tried to escape some of the media attention that had been hounding him after the shooting. I just got really invested in the relationships and the story and his journey, and had a very, very good time with this. So I'm really, really glad that this was the middle grade March book club pick, because I never would have picked this up, I think, on my own. Like, I don't think that I, one, maybe would have even heard of it, but two, that based on the premise, I would have voluntarily picked it up. Mainly because I try not to think about school shootings too much because I have little ones and it terrifies me. But I went into this basically blind because I knew it was going to be their book club pick and I hadn't read it. So I went, oh, well, I'll read that, and just never bothered to read what it was about. So I actually, like I said, really, really enjoyed this. I'm really grateful that I picked it up and would highly recommend you check it out if you feel you can handle the content in it. Then I read The Sister Split and I gave this 4 stars. So this follows Autumn, and she's very, very not happy. She and her brother George and her mom live in New York City, and she's looking forward to spending the summer with her best friend and getting to explore because they're finally old enough that they're getting a little bit more freedom to explore the city on their own. They have this whole plan all set out, and she heads home for a family game night where her mom has this bombshell announcement that, surprise, she and her boyfriend Harrison are getting married, and she, George, and Autumn will be moving to Harrison's house in East Hammond, which is in Connecticut. And that means she will be living there with Harrison and his daughter, Linnea. And well, she's bummed. This is not at all how she planned her summer. She does not want to move to another state. She doesn't want to be living with Harrison, who she really does not like. And she doesn't really have a relationship with Linnea, even though their parents have been dating for a while. She ends up concocting this plan with her best friend to sabotage the relationship so that she can break up Harrison and her mom and hopefully move back home. And once she's in East Hammond, ends up roping Linnea in. And they work together to try to break up their parents. I really enjoyed this. I liked seeing Autumn struggle with the idea because she thought her family was just fine and she didn't want things to change, and change can be hard. I liked seeing her kind of struggle with that, and Linnea being the only person in the house that really noticed how much she was struggling and how that kind of played into things. I liked seeing the girls' relationship develop because they didn't really have a relationship before, despite the fact that their parents have been dating for a few years. Autumn also ends up going through some other things that I think I will let you explore as you read the book, but those are also interesting and I think also add to a lot of the turmoil she's feeling. And I enjoyed the journey and seeing them try to figure out with interesting ways to break up their parents. At times, there were things about this that frustrated me, like the lack of realizing what was going on with Autumn and how neither her mom, Harrison, or her brother George, who is getting ready to go to college next year, recognize how upset she is. So I would get frustrated because, like, I felt so bad for her. I think she was frustrated, so I was feeling her frustration, which brought my rating down a little. But I thought this was a good little middle grade contemporary, and I had a fun time with it. And then the last standalone that I finished, which is another 4-star read, and Cielo is back, she right there, so she may pop in, is A Strange Thing Happened in Cherry Hall. This also got 4 stars, and this is by Jasmine Warga, who wrote a Rover story, which I absolutely loved. So I kind of went into this blind. I had no idea what it was going to be about, but we're following a young boy named Rami, whose mom works at a museum, and a painting goes missing while she's at work. And that makes him a little nervous, because what if they think it's his mom? And then one day he sees this girl at the museum, realizes she can float, and she just so happens to look like the girl from the missing painting. So he ends up getting help from a girl he knows from school named Veda, and they work together to try to solve the mystery. I really, really enjoyed this. I thought it was a very quick read. I really liked seeing Rami and Veda's relationship develop. We also get a couple of chapters from the POV of a turtle, which I thought was really, really interesting, and I really like how they played into it. I enjoyed trying to piece together the mystery of who took this painting and why, and how they're seeing this ghost and what she is doing there and how she plays into the bigger story. This was just a fun, quick little middle grade mystery that I had a lot of fun reading, and I need to read more from Jasmine Warga because I've really enjoyed the stuff I have read. So definitely going to add her to my auto by authors list just because I have so much fun with her books and I could see myself rereading them, even though I didn't like this one quite as much as A Rover Story. So those are the books I finished. I did start another one, and I probably should have picked one of my nonfictions, but I wasn't in the mood for a nonfiction. And because I didn't want to read Don't Be a Drag, and I didn't know whether this was going to be spooky or not, I had nothing else to pick up last night. So I ended up picking up The Spell Shop. And this is a cozy fantasy romance. And I don't really know much more about it. I'm only 56 pages in, but I'm enjoying the vibes so far. It was exactly the kind of vibes I wanted. So we'll see if I continue to enjoy this one. Though how much of it I'm going to get read this weekend, I don't know, because I'm planning on reading nothing but nonfiction. So we'll see. So that was my week. I got through all of my standalones, which made me very happy, even though I had another one come in. No, I had another 2 come in from the library. I'll actually show those off. So you get a sneak peek at what I will be reading after the final book support group ends. So we have The Pumpkin Princess and the Forever Knight, which as far as I know is a standalone. It's not the first in a series. And obviously I was hoping to read this during spooky season and it just didn't come in. And then the other is one I'm really excited for, and that's The Briar Club by Kate Quinn, which is a historical fiction. And I've read tons of books by Kate Quinn, really enjoyed them, and I've been saying I want something I can kind of sink my teeth into. Not that you can't with fantasy, but it's different. If you read historical fiction, you kind of know what I mean. And so I'm very, very excited to have this as an option for later this month. So all in all, I'm pretty happy that I got through my standalones because it gives me the ability to kind of tailor these vlogs a little bit because I don't normally do that. Normally I just read whatever I want, whenever I want, but I felt like I kind of wanted to do a dedicated nonfiction vlog, and then I was like, well, I'm going to try to read all of the sequels during Final Book Support Group. So what if instead I do a vlog where I just specifically focus on, like, my standalones? So it kind of worked out well. I wrapped up books I was reading in October and finished my standalones. So very, very happy with my progress. And I also managed to edit and upload my April book haul. It's going out tomorrow, so that's, well, later today, because it is the 8th, and it's going out at noon my time on the 8th. So, I mean, you will have seen that probably weeks ago, because I know how I am, but I'm slowly but surely catching up on my editing. So, the goal is to be caught up by the end of November. We'll see how that goes. Anywho, I'm going to wrap this vlog up here. All of my social media is linked in the description below if you'd like to come chat with me. If you've made it this far in the video, leave me a strawberry emoji. No idea why, it just popped in my head. Like this video and subscribe to my channel, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye!